Alright. There we go then. All set?
All set, okay,
All set.
Yes. So what do you want to know about?
Well, last time we did a bit of a scattergun, just the whole career overview, everything that you did, but going back to the beginning, the Naval Academy, Merchant Navy Academy, what was that all about and what did that look like?
Okay, well...
Where was it?
It wasn't exactly an academy.
Yeah.
It wasn't that sort of high class. It was known as the Merchant Navy Sea Training School,
Yeah.
which was located on the River Severn in Sharpness in Gloucestershire, England.
The River Severn.
River Severn, yeah.
A number of the rivers are there.
Yeah. It's spelt different to the number 7.
Oh.
But yeah, that's where it was anyway, and I was there for 6 weeks training as a ship steward. The deckhands, or the deck boys, they were there for 10 weeks. They had a longer course, but 6 weeks was certainly long enough at that school.
What was the difference between the deckhands and the deck boys?
Well, the deck boys are the beginners.
Yeah.
And they become deckhands on the ship, and they start off as down the bottom deck boys, work their way up to the bosun. He's like the chief of all the deckhands.
There's a lot of euphemisms and jokes that could be made about these names, isn't there?
There certainly is, yes. yes. But,
so they trained longer because they were lower in the rank?
No, they weren't lower. It's equivalent ranks, but their course was longer on what they had to learn. They had more things. It wasn't just learning how to tie knots in ropes, but all kinds of things to do with seamanship. So their courses were 10-week courses, and for the stewards, which I was in, that was a 6-week course. And the year before, in 1961, I was tossing up whether to apply for the Royal Navy, the Royal Air Force, whether to go into the Royal Air Force or the Merchant Navy. And we had a family friend who'd been in the army for 22 years, and he was trying to encourage me to go into the Royal Air Force, which is the second best to the Navy, army to him.
So an armyman wanted you in the Air Force?
Yes, so he's trying to talk me into joining the Air Force, but he left the army and spent about 2 or 3 months on the Union Castle liners going down to South Africa as like a security guard type of thing, and he didn't like the life at sea, and he's trying to put me off joining the Merchant Navy. But the more he told me about the Merchant Navy, the more I wanted to do it. So I applied to join the Merchant Navy, and I had to go to the Merchant Navy Sea Training School, and I went there in January 1962. I was there for 4 weeks and had my 17th birthday there, and then 2 more weeks at the school, and went home for 2 weeks before joining my first ship.
What were they doing in the training? What was involved in that?
Just basic stuff, learning how to be a ship steward, how to wait on tables, boring stuff really. And we did 1 week on the lifeboat course, which was the most interesting week. I got my lifeboat certificate, which meant I could take charge of a lifeboat if I had to, which I did briefly on 1 occasion. That's another story.
That's another story, but that was to do with the Wahine, right? Yeah.
Before the Wahine.
Oh, before, all right. Well, we'll store that one then, yeah.
Yeah. And so it's just learning basic things about catering and being a steward and that kind of stuff. And
so the stewards are just doing all sorts of jobs on the ship. So if I go take a ferry somewhere, those are stewards that are at the cafe directing traffic.
That's it. It's basically catering and doing whatever's involved with looking after cabins and making bunks. Really a boring job, but the lifestyle was what appealed to me and what appealed to a lot of young guys. And I thought of joining the military. I thought, well, if I join the Air Force, I could be stuck on an air base in England and not go anywhere. If I go on a ship, I'm bound to go somewhere. And I thought maybe around the Mediterranean, something like that. But my first trip took me out to New Zealand from England.
The first trip, the opposite side of the planet, the first time at sea.
That's it, yes. So So as a 17-year-old, I was off to halfway around the world, which was good. I enjoyed it. But the actual life in the Sea Training School, which is also commonly known by most of the boys that have been there as the Vindi, which was named after the ship called the Vindicatrix.
The who?
The Vindicatrix.
I'm just thinking of a ship wearing tight leather now. Yep, the Vindicatrix.
That's it. That's why it got called the Vindi for short.
Vindi, a little bit easier to say. Yeah.
So there have been several thousand boys who would have gone through the Vindi training school and would know what I'm talking about.
There's a plaque on Wellington Harbour to the Vindi Boys, isn't there?
That's right, yes. Halfway around the world from England is the plaque in remembrance to all the Vindi Boys that have been on the British ships. Many who would have gone out to New Zealand and Australia.
It's along the harbour front, just under Frank Kitts Park, right?
That's right, Frank Kitts Park.
Yeah, there's all these plaques to World War II, Vindi Boys, various other things.
Yeah, different military outfits, and also one of the masts from the Waihini that sank in the harbour, that's also in Frank Kitts Park on the Wellington waterfront, which is now a park. But when I first went to Wellington, all along that front there, it was all warehouses for the unloading of the ships. So it looked totally different from when I first went there.
What is it now?
Yeah, there's all these warehouses. There's still a couple left, like where the Museum of the City and Sea is.
Yeah,
if you can imagine that building, that's what they were like all along that front there.
So the one that's left there is a Ferg's Rock and Kayak in it. You go rock climbing and hire kayaks. Well, that would have been one of the original...
Yeah, that's one of the original warehouses, yeah. But they've all gone now. So that was a plaque in
Wellington,
Wellington, Frank Kitts Park, yes. I don't know of any more around the world, but there could be.
But the Vindicatrix was on the River Severn.
On the River Severn, yes.
Not to be confused with the number.
No, that's right. One of Britain's bigger rivers. Yeah, it's actually moored in the canal there, and the canal, the locks which sort of let into the river. So they would have brought this ship through the locks. It looked too wide to get through, but they must have got it through the locks somehow, and it was moored on the canal there beside the River Severn. And I suppose we got quite well fed when we were at the school, but we quite often got bread with every meal, and a lot of the boys just had enough of eating bread. So what we would do after a meal, we'd take the bread that we hadn't eaten, we'd go up on deck, and the seagulls were there waiting for us. And normally, if we feed the seagulls, they get one big flock comes down and grab.
Yes.
But not these seagulls. They flew around in a circle, and as they came round past the ship, they'd grab a piece of bread that we threw up to them and keep on flying and come round again. and I did this every meal time, breakfast, lunch, tea time.
You trained them when to turn up and how to catch it.
Yeah, they knew when to turn up, yeah. And they just fly around in this anti-clockwise circle and just taking their turn at grabbing bread as they went past us.
Wouldn't even bother to land.
No, they just kept flying around and eat it while they're flying and come round ready for the next piece. And you can imagine a couple of hundred boys up on the deck throwing the bread up to them. There's plenty of bread for them. But
and the staff never caught on that you guys had too much bread?
Not really. We just got bread all the time.
Good, you're eating it.
Bread and butter, to go with the meal. It seemed like we didn't really get much food, but we were fed enough and got the right stuff. I remember on a Sunday, we'd have Sunday midday lunch, and I was friendly with this guy who lived fairly close in Gloucester. And after lunch on a Sunday afternoon, his father would come in his car, pick us up, take us back to his home. We'd have a second lunch, another roast dinner, because we were quite sort of hungry really. But
you would have been about 18, 17, 18?
I was 17 there.
Yeah, you see Janet's at that age.
Yeah. So we got 2 lunches on a Sunday, and we ate all of it. We didn't waste anything.
Yeah.
But yes, then there's the local seamen's mission nearby. We used to go up to the mission of an evening.
The mission?
It's like a club for seamen, known as the Flying Angel mission. And they used to be in ports all around the world. I don't know if they still are now, but so we go to the Seamen's Mission, and it's run by the church, and they provide like evenings for the seamen.
Kind of a Rotary Club, RSL sort of thing.
Yeah. Sometimes they'd have a dance on, and local girls would come along, and
I bet it is.
But we had to behave ourselves. There's no misbehaving.
Yeah, there's no unauthorised activities to be had here, right?
That's right, yes, yeah. So it used to be things like dances, and put meals on, and film shows sometimes, put on a film, just to entertain the seamen when they go ashore in a foreign port.
Keep them out of trouble if you know where they all are. Sort of thing.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. I was somewhere in the shore and went to the local pub. The first pub outside the dock gates all around the world was well known to seamen, and there's always some seamen on the ship that knew where the first pub was, the closest pub or the best one.
Oh, of course, that's how you travel the world, isn't it? You travel the world and see all the local pubs.
That's right, yes. When I got into port, I used to try and go for a walk or go for a train trip somewhere, go and have a look around the place. But a lot of guys, it was the first pub at the dock gate.
Seen the world by going inside all the pubs.
Yeah, that's
what have you really seen?
That's it, and you go back to the ship dead drunk, can't remember anything. And so getting back to the sea training school. Yes. One of my jobs, they put me in charge of a new group of boys that came in. Each week a new group of boys would come in and the group would leave. And I'd been there maybe about 4 or 5 weeks, and I was put in charge of this group of boys which were in like army huts, sort of billets. So there's about 20 guys to each hut. And on Saturday mornings it was traditional that even on the ships the captain would go around the ship or around the camp and have an inspection, make sure everything was clean and tidy. Army style, that's right, yes. And of course I had to organise these boys to clean up the billet, and one of the things was sweeping the floor, which was all I know, of course. And I thought we'd done a good job this one Saturday morning, and about 11 o'clock along comes the captain with all of his gold braid on and medals, and maybe been through the Second World War, and with him was his group, about 6 other officers, all with the medals and everything, all looking important and hats on. And as soon as he walked in the door, the sun came out and it's shining through the windows, and straight away I could see under each bunk all this dust on the floor, and I'm thinking, I hope the captain doesn't notice it, but of course he spotted it straight away. And so me being in charge of these boys, he came up to me.
It's your fault.
My fault, yes. Where did that dust come from, he says. I said, I don't know, sir. And he said, I want to know where that dust came from. I said, I don't know, sir. And he said, I'm not leaving here until you tell me where that dust came from. So
you better give an answer.
Yeah, got to give an answer. And I thought, saying I don't know, that's not going to get me off the hook, so I've got to give him an answer. So I thought, where does dust come from? And it came to me. I said, well, sir, it floats around in the atmosphere until it settles, which is quite true.
It's the literal answer to the question, where does dust come from?
That's it, yes.
Why is it there?
That was right, it was there. But
in the atmosphere, gravity,
that's it. So it settled on the ground, and of course we hadn't seen it until the sun came out. And telling the captain where it came from, he got a bit upset over that, and he got a bit embarrassed, and he stormed off with a red face, and all his other officers following along with a grin on the face. And that was the end of that.
The entourage of importance satisfied about where dust comes from?
That's right, yes. He
enlightened us now.
I think he should have rephrased the question and asked, why is the dust there?
Why have you not cleared it?
Yes. And I could have said, well, we didn't do the job properly and we missed it.
But he asked where it came from.
He asked where it came from, so
you told him.
I told him, which was quite true. Where else does dust come from? It's in the atmosphere.
It is. And it settles because of gravity, doesn't it? You should put that one in there.
That's right, yeah. So anyway, he stormed off, and that was the end of that story. And yeah, but
Did you get in trouble for that answer, or anybody pull you up about it?
Only there was a second steward that was sort of our supervisor, and after this officer and captain walked out, he came up to me and said, "That was a good answer, but don't be cheeky again." I said, "Well, I wasn't being cheeky. He asked for an answer, and I gave it to him, and that's true." And he just, yeah, okay, nods after you.
Can't argue with that.
That's it, yeah. So, yes, that was the end of that. Apart from that, life went on. What else? Nothing else really happened.
Well, you were telling me some story earlier about your time off. Was that during the training camp, or when you're at sea? Something about the wagons?
Yes, yes. A couple of years later, or following year or two, we were in Hamburg, in Germany, in dock day.
Okay, so this is after the training. You're at sea now.
Yeah,
we've got to finish the story now.
Do you want me to tell you about that?
Yeah, I do. I do.
Yeah. Well, my two mates and myself have been ashore in Hamburg, had a few beers, and in Hamburg you get all these little, more like coffee bars. They're small bars, and you go around and have a few drinks, go to the next one. And we were coming back to the ship, well inebriated.
Yes. Thoroughly legless.
Yes, and walking back along the wharfs towards our ship, and alongside the wharf there's like a railway track with have little wagons on them which they load up with cargo and run it back to the warehouse. Mm-hmm. But the two mates and myself, we were taking it in turns for one of us to get in the wagon, and the other two would push it along, and the one on the front would be shouting out, "Wagons roll," and all this kind of rubbish, and they're going up and down this track, and then one of my mates got into it, and I gave a nod to my other mate pushing it, and let's push it really hard, and we pushed it hard, and it went rolling along, and he's still on the top on the wagon, in the way, and we left him to it, and it goes rolling into this warehouse, and all these German wharfy guys were in there, and it goes all quiet, except for the Gorfy shouting.
Oh yes, yeah.
And he comes running out pushing this little wagon, and by then I was walking back to the ship, and I heard this loud splash, and looked round, and my two mates come running along, and I said, "Quick, run!" And I said, "What's happened?" I said, "Oh, we've pushed the cart into the water."
Off the tracks into the wharf.
Off the tracks into the water, yeah.
It would have taken some effort.
It was only a small one. I mean, they somehow managed it between the two. Yeah. and then you got all these wharfists shouting police or something in German, police.
Oh, yeah. So you're in proper trouble.
It's 18 after, so we quickly onto our ship and up into bed and we're asleep. Don't know nothing.
Don't know nothing about that. Yeah. So, who knows who that was?
Yeah, but that was in Hamburg in Germany.
So some proper youthful hooliganism going on at sea.
Yeah, always something going on. But yes, a couple of occasions. I've heard of deckhands. Two occasions, they're both deckhands, different occasions, coming back to the ship, really dead drunk, walked off the wharf into the water and drowned. The first one happened in London docks, and the second one happened here in Melbourne.
Really?
Yeah, and of course he was drowned as well. They both got drowned, and when the ship left port, the propeller stirred things up, and his body came to the surface, and they found him.
Okay, so they didn't go into the propeller, but that's how they recovered him.
Yeah, they recovered him, yeah. Yeah, didn't actually go into the propellers. But yeah, two got drunk.
I suppose there was no occupational safety hazard sort of posh type stuff back then. It was just
that's right.
Look after yourself.
Yeah, because the wharf, there's no safety rails along there. You just if you're weaving, staggering away and go over the side. That's it. You've had it. There's nothing really to hang on to save yourself. So yeah, that was a couple of unfortunate incidences for them.
Yes, well, it's really got to be careful around going drinking and have a good time. Putting the wagon in the water is one thing, but you've got to watch yourself.
That's right, don't go in with it.
Don't go in with it, no. Yeah. Bit of caution.
Yeah.
Yeah, I jumped ahead a bit there. I knew that one about the wagon, but I thought that was attached to the sea training thing. No. This is much later on. So.
No, this was when we were responsible stewards.
Very responsible.
Yeah. But the sea training school...
what was it called?
It's called the Merchant Navy Sea Training School. No, or was it National? Yeah, Merchant Navy Sea Training School, that must be it. Known as the Vindi, short for the Vindicatrix. Vindicatrix was an old, late 1800s sailing ship, which used to be on the tea trade between England and India.
Oh, as in tea?
Yeah. Cups of tea, yes. Yeah. Yeah, thanks for the Vindi. Yeah. I suppose back in those days it would have gone round Cape Horn, round South Africa way, and back up the Indian Ocean to India in the days before the Suez Canal would have been built. Yeah, that was an old sailing ship, and I did my lifeboat course on that ship. Now, modern ships, the lifeboats are sort of on davits, and if they're launched, they sort of hang out over the side.
And those are called davits.
Davits, like David.
Oh, yeah.
Davits, they're called. It's a merchant navy name.
A lot of this sounds made up, so I'm just going to believe you that this is real.
Think of them as little cranes that move.
Yeah.
And that's what normally happens. But on this being an old ship, they, I suppose they're still davits, but they were sort of facing inwards, and the boat was hanging inside of them. And so to launch them, you had to sort of swing one out to put the boat through that way, and pull it round, and then turn the other davit around so that they're both hanging out. It's an awkward way to do it. Yeah, it's like that. You've got to get them out that way with the boat going in between the davits. That's the old-fashioned way. And of course, we had to learn how to launch a lifeboat doing that. If you can imagine that, if the ship's at sea and it's sinking, it's got a list on, the wooden decks are all slippy, and you're trying to do that, and it would be very difficult to launch a lifeboat. Yes, so my other experience with a lifeboat, launching a lifeboat, was when I worked on the ferries from Wellington to Picton, and this once a week we'd have a lifeboat drill. We'd launch a lifeboat, and the ship would stop. You'd pull away from the wharf, then it'd just stop in water. And the lifeboats would be lowered down so that the lifeboat came alongside the ship. And then there's these two wires that sort of held the lifeboat. Instead of hanging vertically, it's held in. So it's held in close to the ship's side, so people could step into the lifeboat. Well, this deckhand, he'd stepped in. He was in charge of it, and he went and sat down the back. I stepped into the lifeboat, and one of the other stewards, one of my workmates, he had 1 foot on the ship, 1 foot on the lifeboat, and they released these wires, and the lifeboat swung out. He went straight down the water, lifeboat swings back in, bashes against the side of the ship, which it always does, and then settles down with a wobble.
Yes.
And of course, you're supposed to, the proper way to launch it is to use pulley, a rope and pulley, to hold it in, then release these wires, and then ease it out. But that was a hard way, the long way.
So you could just let it go and let it swing.
Let it swing, bash the ship and go. Anyway, my mate had gone down, landed in the water, and I don't know if anybody noticed, but I called out to the guys on the winch, lower away quick. So it lowered away. This deckhand in charge just sat there, and got halfway down. I looked over the side, I couldn't see him, so I looked over further. It's right underneath the lifeboat. I had to say, stop lowering, and I called to him, swim away from the side of the ship, because the lifeboat would have come down
right on top of him.
So he swam away a bit, and I said, okay, lower it away. And he ended up in the water, on the water there, and he comes swimming back, and I start pulling him on board. Then this deckhand finally gets up and comes and helps me. And he goes and sits down again. So I say, okay, raise it up, and we took him up. Of course, this guy was soaking wet, of course, being in the water. And
that would happen, yes.
Yes, but luckily he wasn't injured, because it fell from quite a height, really, about 10 metres. It's a fair way to go, really.
That'll do it, yeah. You could have got whiplash, or all sorts of things could have gone wrong there. So.
Yeah. If you've got a life jacket on and you go in like feet first, that can come up, knock your neck, break your neck. So it was lucky that didn't happen. And as the lifeboat, when it swung back the first time, hit the side of the ship, if he'd been there or hanging on,
it would have been grape juice.
That's right, yes. So he was lucky he actually fell.
Yeah.
And ended up in the water. But yeah, while all this was going on, I saw the captain up on the bridge. He was watching what was going on. Mm-hmm. I heard later that he called up the chief officer and the boatswain and had a go at them. They said the lifeboat was just a disaster that morning. But,
you're practising to save lives and you nearly kill somebody in the process.
That's right, yes. Yeah, well, I suppose I did help save this guy's life in one way.
Well, in many ways, because nobody else noticed that he had fallen in the water and the lifeboat swinging around, smashing against the ship. I mean,
yeah.
There's harsher words than disaster you could use for that.
That's it, yeah. But I was on the ship going back to England. I was working my passage back to England. I got a job on this passenger ship. This was after the Waihini had sank, which I'd been involved in. Mm-hmm. And we used to have lifeboat drill out at sea while the ship was moving along. And we'd be lined up, all of us that were supposed to be in the lifeboat. And the officer would come along and say, you in the lifeboat, you in the lifeboat. And he came and stood in front of me, big smile on his face. He says, you haven't been in the lifeboat yet, have you? I said, yes, thank you. I went all the way down when the Waihini sank. He stopped smiling. He said, so you don't want to go in again? I said, no, thank you.
No.
And he steps in front of the guy next to me, big smile on his face. You're turning in the boat. So he went and got in, and I lowered the boat so far down and back up. And after the lifeboat drill, this guy came to me, how come you don't have to get in the lifeboat? I said, they're not launched properly. They don't use what they call the tricing wire to hold it in. So I'm not getting in there. If anybody falls in the water, they could go through the propellers because the ship's at sea. If they miss that, there's sharks out there. I'm not going to swim with the sharks.
No, I think I'd rather propellers, actually.
It would be a quicker finish.
Yeah, it would.
Yeah.
So that's the mark of experience, isn't it? Why don't you get in? I've seen things.
That's it, yes, I'm not silly.
Yeah. Like the young one that's now had any adventure. Let's go for a cool ride in the thing.
Yeah.
Off you go.
Yeah. So that's my experience with lifeboats and lifeboat drill, yeah.
Well, while we're on that theme, there was something about the Waihini while we're at it. That lifeboat experience during that storm was not what you would want to be, is it?
No, on the Waihini there's 4 lifeboats on each side, and because it was capsizing, the lifeboats on the high side of the ship were too high. It was too late to launch them. So they launched them on the lower side, which is quite low to the water by the time I got off. And yeah, I was hanging on to... I opened this door that opened outwards and hooked it back. It's just got a round doorknob on it. I was hanging on to that and helping people slide down, hanging on to me and going down to the rail, then getting into the lifeboat. I eventually got into the lifeboat. I jumped over the side first because they were leaving without me. So I jumped over the side and swam to the lifeboat. Got pulled on board the lifeboat. And then that got swamped either by a wave or they didn't put the plug in the bottom, I don't know. But it's the only lifeboat with an engine. The others were hand propelled. Of course the engine stopped being underwater.
Engine stop underwater, and I'm still stuck on the hand propelled motors on a lifeboat.
It was hand propelled, yeah. It was like, how would you explain, you got the propeller and you got these long rods that you hang on to, and they were sort of like that type of thing. You'd rotate them, but...
It's archaic even for the 60s.
Well, it was 1968.
Yeah, but even for them that's old technology, isn't it?
Well, the earlier ones were backwards and forwards like that.
Oh, so these were the modern ones going like that, is it?
Modern.
There's an upgrade from this.
That's
They're
it.
much better in the storm.
Yeah, well, it did work better than the engine.
Oh, is it a ship or a submarine or a lifeboat? Pick a lane.
Yeah. Anyway, we ended up sitting on this lifeboat. We had our life jackets on, and each time a big wave came along, we'd on our seats would rise up because we've got life jackets on. Mm-mm. As the wave went past, we'd come back and sit down again. And this happened quite a few times. And then the tugboat came along, and it just nudged the lifeboat because the lifeboat turned upside down. And I float quite well upside down. There's more of it out of the water upside down than what there was right way up underwater. So, because we all got washed off the top of this. We went back onto the lifeboat 3 times.
It was capsized, so
capsized.
You're getting on the underneath of the lifeboat, floating on top.
That's right, yeah. 3 times I got back on there and got washed off by these big breakers. Mm. And the tugboat came back and tried to pick us up, and I swam to the tugboat. And there's 2 guys on the tugboat trying to pull me up the side of the tugboat. Mm-mm. There's nothing to grab onto, there's no foothold.
If these aren't rescue boats, these are just random boats coming out to help.
Not really meant to climb on board a tugboat when it's out at sea, especially when it's pitching up and down.
Yeah.
So I said to them, let me go, I'll swim for the shore, which is about 100 metres away. It wasn't all that far really, because the current was actually taking us there. Mm. That's when I decided I could just swim to the beach, get up and walk.
So these guys have got you. Yeah. Are the rescue operation of the day.
That's right.
Trying to pull you up, and you say, just let me go.
Yeah.
Surely they said, no, we've got you.
Well, they didn't want to, no, but I said, let me go. And then I think that later on they got like a rope ladder thing over the side so people could climb up, but they expected me to sort of climb up, but you can't. I would have had my shoes on there, but no, if you imagine trying to climb up the wall of a house with somebody pulling you from the top, it's not easy.
During pitching and wind and rain and all that. So what happened? They let you go?
That's it. So yeah, that's when I decided to swim for the shore, and almost there, and I got ducked by this big breaker. It came roaring along, and so I turned my back on it, facing the shore, and just got prepared to be ducked, because it happened 2 or 3 times. And this one time, everything just went quiet as water went over me, got ducked, went underwater. That's the last I remember, until I vaguely came to in the ambulance. I didn't realise I was in an ambulance at the time. But I could hear this ambulance siren and what sounded like in the distance. I was in and out of consciousness. And I hit my head on the rocks, got knocked unconscious. Got the scar there, that's my Waihini souvenir.
Yes,
another one on the hip.
We've gone out to that spot a few times, and those rocks are just... it would be like going through a blender for a lot of people.
Oh yes, a lot of people, 49 people got killed on the rocks along that coastline.
So it wasn't really the shipwreck or the storm, it was the coming ashore at Pinkara, where all the jagged rocks that really did it for most.
That was the dangerous part, yes. If we'd abandoned ship earlier, it would have been worse, because the storm was worse, but by the afternoon, by about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, it was subsiding, becoming less severe. And the tide was turning, going out of the harbour, and that helped to sort of push the Waihini over. There's a wind one side at the top, and the tide on the bottom, it just capsized it, because the Waihini was full of water. I should have mentioned that. It actually got whole when it went aground, and the engine room was full of water. There's water on the vehicle deck, so it's just on the verge of neutral stability. So it didn't take much. The water and the wind just pushed it over, and it just gradually capsized. And
it's full of water and the current going that way and the wind pushing that way. It's getting it from both angles.
Yeah. So it rolled so far, come back a bit, roll a bit more, and
easing it.
And eventually they decided, okay, I have to abandon ship now. And that's when we, in about 20 past 1. The last thing I remember seeing was the ship actually going onto its side and steam coming up from it. And then I saw the other ferry boat, the Aramoana, that came out to the rescue.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of other smaller craft that came out as well, like private boats came out to the rescue. 2 or 3 got lost. I didn't see any of them.
Got lost?
Shipwrecked.
They were shipwrecked, so the rescues ended up...
They ended up being wrecked, yes.
I didn't know this.
Yeah. I was in hospital with a couple of guys that they were on a boat that got swamped. The waves were just too big for it, and they just got overpowered by the waves and ended up being wrecked. Lost the boat.
So you'd be better off just staying at home when you see something like that happening.
Yeah. But it's just the idea, get out there, do what you can, help where you can, and
because there's no real sea rescue at that point, was there?
No, there's
nothing.
I think there's no lifeboats and no helicopters around.
As with now, I believe they've got those lifeboats with the hole in the floor, so they just run right over you and stop and then just pull you up straight into it.
Oh yeah.
There's like a little window on the bottom of the lifeboat, kind of like rubber dinghy styles, and they see something, they just run over you and then pick you up from the middle. So
be a good way to do it, yeah.
Works.
Yeah. Might be like catamaran type of thing.
No, they're like rubber dinghies, but big ones with an engine on them, right?
Yeah.
And
okay,
they have these little rescue windows underneath it.
Yeah, okay.
So they
I haven't seen them.
Yeah, I don't know if they've been used in Wellington, because Wellington was, Wahine was the last disaster, but I believe that's what they've got. I remember seeing that somewhere, but I might have imagined it.
Yes. But ever since the Wahine disaster in 1968, when the sea gets too rough in the Cook Straits, they cancel all sailings. And
good idea.
But I went across on the Cook Strait ferry once, and they held up the sailing, saying the waves are too big, over 6 metres high, and they've got to be 6 metres at the most. But got out to sea, it didn't look anything like 6 metres to me, and I thought, well, 6 metres I thought would be quite high for a wave, but to me it was calm. It's just a little from what I've seen before, it's just an ordinary crossing. Yeah.
Well, I suppose back then the safety standards weren't really in place, so what you run with is a...
That's right.
And that's it, we complain a lot about these OSH standards and these limitations and those limitations, and there's so many rules, it's suffocating, yet, your generation...
That's it.
There was none of those.
None of it.
None. And so this is why you end up with people falling off the side of a ship during a lifeboat drill.
That's right.
Yes. Just, throw it out there, see what happens, it'll be fine. As with now, have you filled out the right paperwork before you push that button there?
That's right.
Because of these things.
Yeah, it's gone to the extreme now, hasn't it?
Well, hearing you talk, I'm starting to wonder, is it that extreme, or are these things like that for a reason? Because clearly people don't think too much.
Well, I think sometimes you get a little hole in the ground, I put a yellow cone on it. Or orange cone, I should say. And then you go and trip over the cone, so... What's the point?
The point is we followed procedure.
Yeah. In some situations, you do need safety methods, but I think sometimes it is carried too far.
Pendulum swung a little bit too much.
Yeah.
So those are all your sea training, lifeboat sort of experiences? Or?
I think that's about all on lifeboats, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, the lifeboat, it was a frequent thing, something you had to do either in port or at sea.
And what about the Vindi training? Was there anything else on that, or?
Nothing unusual, no, not really. It's just apart from being the old-fashioned type of lifeboats to swing out. Rather awkward. You had to heave on ropes to pull them this way and then guide them the other way and push them that way. And
you had to do it all manually?
Yeah, manually, that's right, yeah.
I imagine a lot of it would be computerised now, or?
Could well be.
At least motorised.
Yes. Yeah, there must be different ways. I have seen some cargo ships, they got like a lifeboat on the stern, everybody gets into it, and it's at an angle. And they're releasing it, it just goes diving into the sea, so it submerges and floats up to. And that's how they launch it. Quick and easy way, which I wouldn't mind trying that. It sounds like fun. Just sliding into the sea and
just catapult straight in there.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
I mean, it seems barbaric looking at it from the outside, but looking at all the alternatives,
yeah.
Get in there.
That's it. It's a good idea, being on the end of the ship, but if the ship's going down by the bow, how do you get off then?
You pull it back and then you let go.
That's it. Yeah. Yes, I don't know if they've got any other method of if they can lower it even further, but from what I saw of it, it was at an angle, like 45-degree angle. Yeah.
Oh, it's all trial and error. You try one thing and then it's not until it gets tested where you find out whether it really works in practice the way it would on paper.
That's it. Yeah, I wouldn't want to have to do it again. Once was enough. It was an experience. Good experience.
Wouldn't want to do it again, but wouldn't want to have not been there on the day.
No, I'm pleased that I did do it. It's an experience and a bit of an adventure.
Yeah.
But
and not something many people do now. Well, certainly not Anglo-Saxon world. It's a lot of it's.
What's that?
Not a lot of people do that now. Work on the merchant navy. Not from Anglo-Saxon westernised world. A lot of that's been exported.
That's right. Yeah, so a lot of the ship's crews are Filipinos or Asians, Indians.
So they're having all the adventures, and
yeah, that's right.
People like me have their youth working at McDonald's.
That's right, McDonald's. Yes.
You should have joined the ship, so if that was still a thing.
Yeah. Isn't McDonald's the biggest business run by teenagers?
It is. Multi-billion-dollar global conglomerate run by kids.
Yep. Yes. And you've had the experience.
I've had enough. Yeah, I've had my time at that.
Yeah.
Oh well, we'll leave that one out there then, shall we?
Yes, okay. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Maybe come up with something else later.
Another thing. Well, there's plenty of signposts for us to drill down on. And
yeah. I'd like to hear some of your experiences in your occupation.
Yeah, I got some stories for you.
I think you could come up with quite a lot of more interesting stories than what I've been through.
They'd be very different. They're all on land for a start.
Yeah, different, but then that would make it interesting.
Juvenile corrections, saw a few things there, and
working with juvenile kids and
yes, well, New Zealand was where. Because there, your average, 13, 14-year-old, they're twice the size of you and me put together, and here I am, the caregiver, and they're having a meltdown. I'm like, no, look, you stop.
That's it.
Got sent flying a few times, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Very different vein, though.
Well, that's something you could talk about.
Yes. Yeah, well, we will. We'll get to all that.
Yeah. Okay, then.
Oh, well, that'll do for now, eh? We're going to have our cup of tea.
Yes, that was a nice cup of tea, yeah.
All right. Oh, well, until next time.
I hope I haven't bored anybody.
Oh, bugger.